Hello, you're watching Tuesday edition of News Mongolia. Today is August 23rd. For our top stories, 10 Mongolian students will study in Australia via an Australian Awards scholarship. A proposed law on supporting women entrepreneurs was introduced to Parliament. 60% of teenagers are at risk of suffering from depression. For the news, stay tuned. Australia Awards scholarship is continuing for its 30th year. For the year 2023, 10 Mongolian students were selected to study with 100% funding of the Australian government. Australia has provided Australia Awards Mongolia to provide developmental assistance to Mongolia and build human resources capacity. The program operates under a Memorandum of Understanding between the governments of Australia and Mongolia. The scholarship receives applications from all groups in society: women, men, ethnic minorities, people with disabilities, and people living in provinces. Sarol has twice applied for the program from Of's province. She has worked in the government sector for 26 years. On her second attempt, she was selected for the scholarship. Sarol encourages other young people to apply for these kinds of scholarships and grasp the opportunities. After working for 26 years in civil service, I didn't want to stop. I wanted to study more. By attending the Australia Awards, I want to gain more knowledge and share my experience with the younger staff in my province. The scholarship recipients are required to work back in their home country after studying in Australia. The new phase of the Australia Awards Mongolia commenced on October 1st, 2018, with the goal of improving human capacity in targeted sectors.
We now have over 700 Australian graduates from Mongolia who form what we call affectionately the Mozzies, and they're working in all aspects of Mongolian society, from the political to the civil society through business, making a real impact, but building that long-term bilateral relationship between Mongolia and Australia.
Australia Awards scholarships offer Mongolians the opportunity to undertake full-time postgraduate study. Applications are open between February 1st and April 29th of each year. For the upcoming school year, 10 participants were selected from different fields, from engineering, healthcare, renewable energy, finance, civil service to IT. Female members of Parliament introduced a proposed law on supporting women entrepreneurs. If approved, women business owners will be provided with a legal environment that supports their enterprises. 70% of working women are engaged in the trade and service sectors. Business loans and even consumer loans are unattainable for many of these women. Female members of our Parliament have come together to submit a proposed law that supports women by providing an enabling legal environment for them to do business.
The proposed law focuses on giving women a helping hand based on their needs. The support being considered will be given at certain stages of businesses owned by women. A consulting service will also be in effect to provide information on how to expand a business, get into the digital market, create a business plan, and choose a business model.
The resolution also aims to provide women with the opportunity to gain financial support from the government and international organizations. Soft loans, reduced interest rates, and financial eligibility to purchase equipment are also included in the draft. Women face difficult challenges when running a business. Data shows that 1 in 5 women business owners close their businesses, and only 70% have successfully obtained loans. Analysts say that if more women participate in the economy, gross domestic product is likely to increase by 16%. Data shows that 60% of teenagers are at risk of being affected by depression. Physical and verbal abuse, domestic violence, peer bullying are some of the main causes. The psychology of teenagers is calling out for attention from society.
According to the recent study carried out among 1,600 teenagers from age 14 to 19, 57% were prone to be affected by depression. The common behavior caused by mental distress include anxiety, aggressiveness, eating disorder, and bullying others. The teenage years divide into 3 phases. The early phase starts from age 9 and mid phase is from age 12. The late phase starts from age 14.
During teenage years, the brain develops rapidly, which is followed by sudden change in hormones, psychology, and physical state. The emotional state of the teenager becomes unstable. For instance, the teenage loves one thing today and doesn't care about it tomorrow. Also, if things don't go as they imagined, they tend to go down. The most clients who visit psychologists have communication issues in the family. However, the problem is not unsolvable. It's just they have opposite views in seeing and understanding things. I'm afraid of going behind my peers. At these times, the words from my parents encourage me that I'm not falling behind. I felt different emotions during the different stages of teenage years. I tried to calm myself and stay focused at those moments.
Psychologists say that open communication is key for mental health of teenagers. Parents are advised to change their way of communication, which allows teenagers to open themselves. Discussing pros and cons of certain situations gives teenagers a chance to work with their mindset. The most ineffective method is saying no to children and prohibiting their actions without any reasoning or explanations. Many studies suggest that teenagers who are fully engaged in their hobbies more than 6 hours a week have a better mental constitute. At times of emotional disturbance, they showed better handling of their psychological state.
Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Thank you for staying with us on MNB World. Now let's take a look at Mongolia's current affairs.
Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs Daniel Crittenbrink will travel to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia and Seoul, Republic of Korea on August 22nd and 27th. In Ulaanbaatar, Assistant Secretary Crittenbrink will participate in the United States-Mongolia annual bilateral consultations to discuss continued cooperation and shared interests between our two countries. According to the department, the United States is proud to be Mongolia's strategic partner and third neighbor, and is committed to supporting efforts to strengthen democratic institutions, enhance sovereignty, and diversify the Mongolian economy. In Seoul, the Assistant Secretary will hold meetings with South Korean government officials to discuss strengthening U.S.-South Korea alliance and bilateral cooperation across the wide range of regional and global issues, including the threat posed by the North Korea and Russia's unprovoked and brutal war against Ukraine. The Assistant Secretary will also highlight the importance of trilateral cooperation among the United States, Republic of Korea, and Japan.
During the 2 years of pandemic lockdowns, many businesses were hit hard and shut down. A small garment factory in Darkhangot province found a way to survive the pandemic and create job opportunities. One of the assistant tailors in the garment factory is Batr. She said her job helped her earn income during hard times. Flexible working hours allowed her to work from home and still look after her children.
I live with my husband and 5 kids. It was hard for me to find a job because I have a disability and my children were too young. After Shuten Old hired me as an assistant tailor, my life got much easier. I get pre-cut fabric and make garments. I get a daily salary based on my performance.
Shuten Old has over 10 assistant tailors like Batr who can't work full-time. Some of them even live in nearby provinces. The company has a system for providing pre-cut fabric to their tailors and pays them based on the number of garments they make.
Children have different body shapes. The same size doesn't fit every child perfectly. We focus on making garments that are comfortable and movement-friendly based on our annual survey conducted at schools.
The company calls its production system a cluster method and says it allows them to sell garments and school uniforms at a reasonable price. A school uniform is typically sold for 116,000 tugruk, but Shuten Old sells them for 88,000 tugruk. They say it's due to the smart management of their production stages. Here comes the international news from our partner agencies. The United States and South Korea on Monday kicked off their biggest combined military training in years as the Allies heighten their defense posture against the growing North Korean nuclear threat.
The drills could draw an angry response from North Korea, which has dialed up its weapons testing activity to a record pace this year while repeatedly threatening conflicts with Seoul and Washington amid a prolonged stalemate in diplomacy. While Washington and Seoul describe their exercises as defensive, North Korea portrays them as invasion rehearsal and has used them to justify its nuclear weapons and missiles development.
같은 기간에 실시되는
Wars today are quite different from those in the past. Enemies will certainly conduct cyber attacks on national information and communication infrastructure and attack key industrial bases such as ports, airports, and nuclear power plants. High-tech industrial facilities including semiconductors and major raw material supply chains to neutralize our ability to wage war. This OJ exercise will be a starting point for the government to reorganize its emergency preparedness in line with the changing war patterns.
과거와는 판이하게 그 양상이
A South Korean civic group staged a rally outside the Defense Ministry building to call for immediate suspension of the drills. The joint exercise is a very reckless war rehearsal that not only threatens the peace, said 24-year-old activist Lee Ki-eun. This combined military exercise is especially linked with the US-China confrontation. Due to the issues such as the conflict over the Taiwan Strait, there are also other ongoing multinational trainings. In that sense, the South Korea-US joint military exercise is a very reckless war rehearsal that not only threatens the peace of the Korean Peninsula, but also the peace of the Northeast Asia region. So we oppose the military exercise. The Ulchi Freedom Shield exercises will continue through September 1st in South Korea and include field exercises involving aircraft, warships, tanks, and potentially tens of thousands of troops.
The German government said Monday that several substances seem to have contributed to the massive die-off of fish in the Oder River that forms much of the country's border with Poland.
A spokesman for the Environment Ministry also rejected suggestions by a senior Polish official that Germany was spreading fake news about pesticides being behind the environmental disaster. The search for the causes of the fish die-off in the Oder is still not complete. Several organic and inorganic substances seem to be to blame, said Andreas Kubler, the spokesman. Dead fish in the Oder were first noticed by fishermen in southwestern Poland in late July, but German authorities said they weren't officially notified by their Polish counterparts until the second week of August. Poland's government has to track down those responsible. Warsaw lashed out over the weekend with Environment Minister Anna Moskva accusing Germany of fake news about the levels of pesticides in the river. In Poland, the substance is tested and detected below the quantification threshold. That is, it has no effect on fish and other species, she wrote on Twitter. In response, Kubler said Germany never blamed Polish use of pesticides for the die-off.
Now let's take a look at our regular feature on sports. Thousands of Manchester United fans angry at the direction of the club under its American owners took part in a protest ahead of the Premier League game against Liverpool on Monday.
The supporters chanted against the Glazer family, "We want Glazers out," and held banners calling for the Americans to sell United as they walked from a nearby pub to the club's old storied Old Trafford Stadium during the hour before kickoff of one of the biggest matches in English soccer, which United won 2-1 for its first points of the season. Many supporters around the ground were wearing green and gold scarves, the colors of the club's 1878 formation, and some also set off flares. There appeared to be a robust police presence on Sir Matt Busby Way at the entrance of the stadium court. The players from both teams, including United's Cristiano Ronaldo, arrived at the ground before the protest started. Discontent has soared following United's poor start to the season, which has seen this team lose both of its games, 2-1 at game at Brighton and 4-0 humiliation at Brentford. The target of the majority of the anger is the Glazer family, which bought United in 2005 with the leverage takeover that loaded debt onto a club which previously didn't have any. Critics say the Glazers, who also own the NFL's Tampa Bay Buccaneers, have failed to invest enough of their own cash in the squad or facilities and have presided over years of failure by England's biggest team. Payments on interest, debt and dividends to the Glazers are estimated to have cost United more than £1 billion. That protest was sparked by the club's involvement in the failed European Super League breakaway that collapsed amid a groundswell of condemnation from fans and the British government.
Qatar recently arrested at least 60 foreign workers who protested going months without pay and deported some of them, an advocacy group said, just 3 months before Doha hosts the 2022 FIFA World Cup.
The move comes as Qatar faces intense international scrutiny of its labor practices ahead of the tournament. Like other Gulf Arab nations, Qatar heavily relies on foreign labor. The workers' protest a week ago and Qatar's reaction to it could further fuel the concern. The head of a labor consultancy investigating the incident said the detentions cast new doubt on Qatar's pledges to improve the treatment of workers. In a statement to the Associated Press on Saturday night, Qatar's government acknowledged that a number of protesters were detained for breaching public safety laws. It declined to offer any information about the arrests or any deportations. Video footage posted online showed some 60 workers angry about their salaries protesting on August 14th outside of Doha offices of Al Bandari International Group, a conglomerate that concludes construction, real estate, hotels, food service and other ventures. Some of those demonstrating hadn't received their salaries for as many as 7 months, Equidum said. The protesters blocked an intersection on Doha's Syrian Road in front of the Al Shamouk Tower. One detained worker who called Equidum from the detention center described seeing as many as 300 of his colleagues there from Bangladesh, Egypt, India, Nepal and the Philippines. He said some had been paid salaries after the protest while others hadn't. His comments could not be corroborated. Qatar, like other Gulf Arab nations, has in the past deported demonstrating foreign workers and tied residency visas to employment. The right to form unions remain tightly controlled and available only to Qataris, as is the country's limited right to assembly, according to the Washington-based advocacy group Freedom House. The World Cup will start this November in Qatar.
Here comes the weather forecast for the world's major cities. This is it for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow with more news updates. Have a nice evening. Goodbye.